The Lunaverse by Rainbow Double Dash. Episode 1 Longest Night, Longest Day. Chapter 15 Trixie is still here. Trixie shot off, running for the rear entrance of the court. The other 5 ponies followed quickly. Beyond the ruined court was a wide plaza, probably a former courtyard. The trees of the Everfree had yet to encroach on it, meaning the entire palace was covered in slushy, melting snow. It covered the tiled ground beneath them. Trixie had paused as she entered, letting out a huge sigh of relief as she did. A slight tingling sensation was running down her body, but she talked it up to nervousness, fear, and mounting exhaustion. Sitting in the plaza, near the exact center, was what looked like a sculpture made from obsidian. Rising in the center was a pillar of volcanic glass, about 10 feet tall. At its tip stretched more than a dozen long spikes made from the same stone, each a different length. The 5 longest spikes at their ends were impaling 5 large stone spears, each of which bore a different marking carved into their surfaces. It looked almost like a sculpture of a star in nova, and it definitely looked far too delicate to have possibly withstood a millennium of not being tended to by a master stonemason. The most interesting part of the statue, though, was that it was bare and smooth. Despite the low fog and the snow around it, the statue itself was dry. Even more so than the rest of the palace, this seemed somehow utterly still and inert. Tracy let out a sigh of relief as she turned around, gesturing to the statue. "The elements of—" she began, but she noticed that the other 5 ponies were casting their gazes around in panic, none of them looking at her. "Where did she go?" Carrot demanded, as he trotted forward several paces, nearly running down Trixie, before the unicorn sidestepped out of the way. "Trixie!" "I'm right here," Trixie said, looking down her hooves. Or, trying to anyway, as her hooves seemed to have vanished, along with the rest of her body and clothing. "Or not. Okay, I'm invisible. Must be a poison joke." "She can't have just disappeared," Cheerily interrupted. "I totally can, actually," Trixie noted, "but I'm—" "Maybe one of the traps was still active?" Dizzy Dew added, as she beat her wings several times. Getting to the air, she searched the courtyard surface, presumably for any sign of a trap having gone off. "Every pony stay in place for a second. And I'm inaudible," Trixie observed, eyes narrowing. Not that any pony could see her look of concentration, but apparently, at least he knew it was she making it as she trotted over to Carrot Top, who was nearest. "Except I can hear me. I can't see me, though. That doesn't make a lot of sense." Tracy extended a hoof and poked Carrot Top's neck. "Gah!" the air pony exclaimed, leaping sideways in fright. "Something does touch me!" "What?" Raindrops asked, soaring Dizzy Dew in the air, though looking more like she intended to land with extreme prejudice on something rather than remain in the air for safety. "What was it?" "I don't know!" Tracy sighed, looking down at the slush in the ground and drawing out a few letters. Or trying to. Her hoof does seem to pass through the slush without being able to interact with it at all, which admittedly made sense, to an extent, since no pony had noted tooth tracks with no owner being made when she had gone out to Carrot Top. "But I can touch you guys," Trixie noted. She tried her telekinesis, and found it similarly unable to affect the slush. But a brush of Carrot Top's hair was apparently possible, eliciting another surprised shout from her, as despite her telekinesis working, the normal telltale blue evanescence was missing. "Today is Pick a Carrot Top Day!" Trixie thought a moment, then stamped her hoof. Not that it made a sound, when an idea came to her. She took off her hat and cape, also rendered invisible, somehow. Tracy did not understand Poison Joke's rules, and threw the ladder around Carrot Top's back, despite her protests, and then setting the former down on top of the Earth Pony's head. Carrot Top froze in place. "It's on me," she said in a very frightened, quiet voice. "Whatever it is, it's on me. All right, Rock. And my head. The air ponies approached cautiously, as Trixie observed, waiting for them to figure things out on their own. She frowned even as she did, though. You walked into the poison joke first, she observed. Why weren't you affected first? Lyra had reached Carrot Top first. Your head? She asked softly, staring just above Carrot Top. The Earth Pony nodded slowly. Must be Earth Pony fortitude, Trixie decided, waving her hoof through the slush again. It was a unique sensation, passing through solid matter, or solidish matter anyway. Unicorns are more delicate than Earth Ponies. Raindrops will probably be next. Then you. Hold real still, Lyra said, as her horn began glowing. With a shout, she glanced out with telekinesis, grabbing whatever it was that had perched on top of Carrot Top's head. As her golden aura wrapped around it, outlined the general shape of Trixie's head. There, Trixie said. See? Just my... It was trying to eat my head! Carrot Top exclaimed as he backed away. Look at the size of its mouth! Gah! And something is still on my back! Trixie narrowed her eyes in annoyance. They swiftly widened, however, when Lyra threw her hat down into the slush, and raindrops landed on it with all four hooves, stomping several times. You idiots! The normally blue, currently transparent unicorn exclaimed, stomping up the raindrops. Leave my hat alone! Raindrops paused at her stomping, hefting the hat upwards with one hoof, still grasping Lyra's telekinesis, regarding the shape and feel of it. I don't think it's a monster, Raindrops observed. I think it's a hat. Carrot Top paused. She had been wrestling with Trixie's cape. Ditsy Do had generally grasped its ends in the mouth, pulling at it as well. Trixie wasn't as concerned for the cape, as it bore several fortifying enchantments that made it far sturdier than its plain conflict success. But her hat did not have such protection. Worst of all, she couldn't even see the damage. Hot? Carrot Top asked, then paused as she shifted a little, feeling the invisible thing on her back. This feels kind of like cloth. Like cloth, but that's probably the slush. Thank you for that, by the way, Trixie said, sighing as she stuck a huff up her hat and began waving it around. The air ponies all started in the sight of Lyra's aura, moving on its own accord. It's the Twitchy! Charlie exclaimed suddenly, through the mouthful of cape. She spat it out and tried again. Pugh! It's Trixie! She's invisible! Lyra frowned at that, extending her telekinesis. Sure enough, her aura spreading around Trixie outlined the general shape of a unicorn. As Trixie set her hat on top of her head, ignoring the fact it was now wet. Somehow, despite her not being able to interact with the slush, poison joke didn't make sense. She waved at Lyra as she grasped her cape on Carrot Top's back and retrieved it, ignoring its wetness as well. What she got in return for the wave, however, was a series of annoyed stares. This isn't funny, Trixie, Shirley observed. I'm not doing it on purpose, she exclaimed, throwing her forehead in the air. She stabbed a hoof at Raindrops, then Carrot Top, then herself, and proceeded to repeat the process. Oh! Carrot Top exclaimed. The poison joke! Thank you! It can turn some pony invisible? Dizzy Do asked. You can do just about anything. It's magic, Carrot Top explained. Like I said, it plays a joke on you. Take something you love and twist it. Oh, I get it, Shirley said. So I guess it's because Trixie always wants to be flashy and noticed, so the poison joke turned her invisible and silent. Trixie made a mental note to make sure to later inform Shirley that she had been glaring at her after that comment. Probably, Carrot Top confirmed. It's probably affected Trixie first since she's a unicorn. Unicorns on average don't have the same kind of toughness as Earth Ponies or Pegasi. No offense, Lyra. And Trixie abandoned. None taken. So, Raindrops, you'll probably be poof! There was an explosion of green from Carrot Top's mane and tail. The two of them almost tripled in size, at least. It changed color from orange to a dark green. shooting out from her head and dock like streamers. Even after the explosion of lights, they continued to visibly grow, albeit at a slower rate. Carrot Top had frozen in place again, eyes wide, probably anyway, as her eyes were now covered by a mass of green. She looked behind her as well. My, my mane! She exclaimed. My tail! She tried to flick her tail, but the sheer mass meant that she got nothing more than a vague twitch. The other ponies rushed over to her, the golden aura around Trixie disappearing as she joined them, despite not being visible. Are you okay? Dizzy Doo asked, eyes wide, mostly coming into focus as he examined Carrot Top's mane, holding it up in her hose. The longest strands were an easy 6 feet long at this point. It's still growing! Where's it coming from? Raindrops asked. Magic, Trixie said, in a face of when she remembered her predicament. Fortunately, Lyra had said as much this moment later. Carrot Top closed her eyes, forcing herself to calm down. I've always been proud of my mane, she stated. So, that's how the poison joke got me. Still growing, Trixie observed, lifting up a mass with one hoof, and listing a slight jump for Carrot Top. Maybe an inch every 10 seconds. Carrot Top stared more or less at Trixie. Do you think you can keep Trixie highlighted, Lyra? She asked. I don't need constant stares. Not really, Lyra observed. I mean, I could, but then Trixie wouldn't be able to walk around on her own. And I doubt she wants that. Dizzy Doo tried to over where she guessed Trixie was, extending a hoof cautiously. Trixie tapped it back, and Dizzy used that as a guide to get beside Trixie and extend one wing over her back. There, she said. She's here. Thanks, Trixie and Carrot Top said simultaneously. Raindrops tapped a hoof on the ground. So, I'm guessing it really is just random, she said, as she, Charlie, and Lyra helped Carrot Top get her still growing mane out of her eyes. But I'm next either way. We need to focus, though, Charlie said, as Carrot Top looked morosely at her mane. The elements of harmony. Trixie ran off looking for them. Are they here? Yes, Trixie responded, but her voice sighing at her forgetfulness. Desi gently extended her telekinesis around Dizzy Doo's head and neck and made the Pegasus nod. Surprisingly, Dizzy didn't resist. Apparently, she anticipated that Trixie would need to do that exact thing. She's making me nod my head, Dizzy said. So, that's a yeah. Poof! Every pony blinked at the sound, turned to look upwards, except for Raindrops. The jasmine-coated Pegasus, having grown to be more than 30 feet tall, looked down instead at the other 5 ponies. She blinked a few times. And there we go! She boomed, every pony else covering their ears at the sound of her voice. It dropped several octaves, and was loud enough to be felt as much as heard. Sorry, she whispered after a moment, as she backed away from them gingerly, her hostess shaking the ground lightly, and sat down as best as she could in what had suddenly become a somewhat narrow space for her. You okay? Carrot Top asked, brushing her still growing mane out of her eyes. It was now at least 8 feet long, and her tail even longer. Fine, Raindrops whispered, though her size meant she was still as loud as a normal pony's regular speaking voice. She looked between each of them. Why are you giant now? Charlie asked. Insecurities about being a big, clumsy elf when flying, probably. Raindrops stirred. Either that, or insecurities about my anger problem, and the possibility that I might hurt somebody when I'm being a big, stupid ball of fury. You have an anger problem? Lyra asked, but you seem calm. Oh, she has them, Trixie confirmed, vividly remembering the events of stars above had it really only been yesterday afternoon. It seemed like forever. Trixie stifled a yawn. Didn't realize no pony could see her anyway, but it wasn't much of a point. Raindrops also nodded in confirmation to Lyra's question. I've got a lid on it. Mostly. She looked at Charlie. Anyway, you were saying? Nearest pony blinked a few times, and held Raindrops was taking her new size. Then shook her head and looked back to Ditsy Doo, or rather, Ditsy's left, where Trixie was still under the Pegasus wing. So, the elements are here. Where? Trixie pointed at the obsidian statue, paused, slapped her face with her hoof, then grabbed Ditsy's hoof and made Pegasus point. The other ponies all looked at the statue. Lyra's horn began to glow as he examined the statue. I don't feel anything, she said. Raindrops groaned. Oh, they're fake! She demanded, forgetting to whisper. No, they're there. They're just going to be broken, and you guys are going to go off on a long journey. They'll take you to Sbrika, underwater, and then back again and face off against the Headless Horse. My gosh, I love the Book of Friendship. Lyra shook her head, as seeing her anger the raindrops to tighten. No, I don't feel anything. Magic is supposed to be everywhere, and in everything. Even when I over-channeled, I still had a bit left in me and always would. But, looking at that statue, it was almost like all the magic had been stripped away from it. She stirred slightly. I didn't know that was possible. I was happier not knowing that was possible. Trixie nudged Ditsy Doo slightly, and the two began trotting forward, up to the statue, stopping within a few feet of it. Trixie reached out telekinetically and began yanking one of the orbs. It came free surprisingly easily. When it reached Trixie, it was completely a smooth stone, except for an arcane mark carved deep into its surface. The spot where the obsidian spike would have been impaling it simply disappeared. Kindness, she stated, handing the orb off to Ditsy Doo. The other ponies, seeing Raindrops and with Carrot Top now lugging an easy 12 feet of mane and tail, crowded around, looking at it. That's kindness, I think, cheerily remarked, with Lyra nodding. Lyra, Trixie, do you think you could get the other 4 down? It only took a few seconds for the 2 unicorns to take down the other 5, sitting down in a pile that the other ponies quickly surrounded, looking over. Generosity, it was said, pointing to the one in front of Carrot Top, then began counting them off. Honesty, laughter, kindness, loyalty. She finished with the one in front of her. At least, that's what they told us in Canterlot. We're missing one, Shirley noted. The 6th element. Which one was that? Carrot Top asked. Shirley, Lyra, and Trixie all shrugged. It's a mystery, Shirley explained. No pony knows, and whenever any pony asks Princess Luna, the rumor says she just smiles. It's not a rumor, Trixie said. Luna loves being mysterious. It's annoying. No pony heard her, of course. Instead, Shirley began trotting around the statue. I don't see the 6th element. It's not here, Trixie said. It wasn't the last time either. When I asked Luna why am I bothering? Did somebody steal it? Raindrops asked, as he squinted and leaned forward, looking closely at the nearest element to her. Honesty. Trixie once again grasped Ditsy Doo's head, though this time she made it shake. Trixie says no, Ditsy Doo answered. So where is it? Lyra asked. After a moment, she realized her mistake. Right. Yes or no questions. Is it nearby? Maybe, Trixie asked, sighing. She tried to conjure up an illusion with the words in her horn, but like her telekinetic aura, it was invisible, nor could she conjure ghost sounds. Lyra insisted. Just write the slush already! You're being added to my list of ponies I'm going to later, Trixie responded. She shook Ditsy Doo's head. I don't think she can, Pegasus said as her head shook. She'd probably already thought of that if she could. I like you the most, Ditsy Doo, Trixie said as she got out from under her wing. Then she put her hoof to her shoulder, and then used the point of it to trace out a letter on Ditsy's coat. She continued doing this a few times, until Ditsy put the idea together. Okay, Ditsy said. Hang on. Trixie's going to write on my coat. Sort of. I get the idea, Trixie. Let's go slowly. It's my first time, too. Trixie said, under her breath, chuckling a little as he began to write. No pony knows, Dissy read. Luna didn't tell me. Just gave stupid riddle. What was it? Shirley asked. Said it was right beside me. The ponies all thought about that one. That? Raindrops asked, extending a massive hoof and pointing to the statue. The statue itself? No, Dizzy responded as Tracy wrote. That was behind me. Oh, Shirley exclaimed. Magic! Like your cutie mark? Get it? Because it's beside you. Tracy rolled her eyes. No, she had Dizzy say. That's on me, not beside me. Shirley deflated and went, oh, she said, right. Maybe it was Princess Luna? Dizzy guessed, then read out her response. No, she said Luna was right in front of her. The Pegasus paused. Unless he hates Luna right now. Gotta admit, I'm not too fond of her right now either, Raindrops whispered. Saving the world shouldn't be this hard. Tell me about it. The steps should be something like journeying through a deadly forest to a ruined castle past death traps in order to retrieve ancient artifacts, then figure out how to use them. It should be something simple like, push this button. Yeah, but that's never as entertaining. Trixie agrees, Dizzy said, as Trixie made her nod her head, then read, Trixie says she's tired. And she hopes I would stop with those inflections because she never does those. Shirley sighed at that. She's got a point. We need to rest. We've been up all too long and aren't thinking straight. We should just take the elements and hide them somewhere. Tracy sighed. Can't move them, remember? She asked, as she hefted one at random, the element generosity and threw it. After about 30 feet, it hit some kind of barrier, bounced back. Tracy caught it as it did, then set it down in front of Carrot Top. I think Tracy just showed us we can't move them from here. Lara observed. She sighed. We still don't know who set off all those traps. We'll rest while we can, Shirley said. Corona will be tied up for days dealing with Cantala and all the other cities and towns in Equestria. We have time. 2 of us will stay awake. The rest of us should sleep for a few hours. Then those 2 can rest. I'll stay awake, Raindrops volunteered as he blushed slightly. And a look of embarrassment was the last thing any pony had expected to see. I, snore, given how big I'm right now. You mean, Dizzy Dew volunteered. I'm used to not getting a lot of sleep. I have a 10-year-old daughter. Do the math. Okay, Shirley confirmed as he trotted forward. Let's see if we can't see the world once we've got clear heads. Celestia allotted a top bridge that overlooked the palace, about a half-mile away from it. Truly, the place had seen better days. Far, far better days. The sea once proud structure fallen into disrepair and ruin, fighting a losing battle against the encroaching vegetation of the Everfree Forest, nearly broke her heart. Perhaps, once Canterlot was dealt with, she would rebuild the palace, make her capital. Yes, it would be the midst of the Everfree Forest. But for all of its peculiarities, the Everfree was still made of leaves and wood, which would burn as easily as in any other forest. It would be a small matter for the rightful Queen of Equestria to shape the Everfree to her desires. Ah, but she was getting ahead of herself. Glancing over her shoulder, she set down her hostesses, surrounding them in fire once more. Albeit this time, it was much for their protection against the savage monsters of the Everfree, as to keep them contained. Having done thus, she turned around once more to the palace, or intended to, but her attention was instead drawn to a much more interesting sight. Thus at the bottom of the ridge she stood upon, in fact. Approaching her was a zebra, wearing a brown cloak, though, as the zebra approached, she threw off the cloak, revealing, emblazoned on her flank, a curious mark of a spiral surrounded by an outward pointing triangles. Ah, her glyph mark. Hey! No following Equestria references! Oh! The zebra, Sakura, Celestia supposed, knelt down once he had dropped close enough, head pressed forward to the ground. It took a considerable amount of effort on Celestia's part, despite how unqueen-like it would have been, to stop herself from exclaiming, "Finally!" at the sight. "Queen Corona, it gladdens me to set my eyes upon your majesty," the zebra exclaimed, wholeheartedly as she looked up. That ruined Celestia's good mood, though, only a little. "Thy respect is genuine enough," Corona announced. "But thou shalt not address me by that name. Corona is a false title invented by my treacherous sister to assuage her own guilt over her betrayal. I am Celestia. As you wish it to be, I shall follow your decree." Celestia noted, with some further dissatisfaction, that Sakura seemed to have the same poor grasp of equestrian that every pony else did these days. Celestia was no stranger to the evolution of languages. She herself did not know precisely how old she was, as neither she nor Luna had bothered to keep track of the first millennia of their existences. But equestrian had reached a certain nobility 1,000 years ago, a nobility which had fallen far by the wayside in the intervening years of her imprisonment, it seemed. This satisfied her no. However, the zebra's intentions were pure enough, and Celestia had far more pressing concerns right now. She looked up from Sakura to the ruined palace. "They have arrived." "It is so, my queen," Sakura said apologetically. "In the palace they convene. I would have stopped them before, but my skills are not those of war. I beg forgiveness of your majesty." "What skills dost thou possess, Sakura?" Celestia asked, surprised that the zebra had not rhymed that last thing she had said. Had that peculiar zebra quirk also begun to fall by the wayside? "My queen, I am blessed with the gift of prophecy." "Ah, there it is," Celestia noted, as one eyebrow raised. Aloud, she continued, "Prophecy?" she inquired. "Certainly thou couldst take greater steps to prevent any from challenging my right to rule such a gift." The zebra bowed her head. "Forgive me, your highness, for being unable, but for some time the future has been unstable. Your return has been all I could see with my gift of prophecy. I do have other talents, building puzzles and riddles I can run. I use the last to aid your escape from the sun." Celestia had been looking again to the ruins of the palace, but froze slightly as he heard Sakura finish speaking, and looked down at the zebra. "What?" she demanded. "Thou believest that I require thine aid to free myself?" Sakura blinked. "The possibility of your return has been known to me for some time," she said cautiously, "and so returning to the site of your sister's crime, using ancient testaments, I worked magic over the elements, created a storm of great power at the appropriate hour." "Silence!" Celestia exclaimed, as he looked down from the ridge and landed evenly in front of the zebra. "I require naught from thee. My escape was under my own power. The elements are strong, but I am the sun. Thou didst nothing!" "You know, I just realized, after about my 4th reading, Sakura created the storm over Everfree in the first few chapters. I just realized that. See, folks, this is what happens when you read one story multiple times. "Hey! Leave me alone!" Celestia had been glaring down at the zebra, much to the mortal's credit. She didn't flee from the wrathful alicorn, but the sound of the small voice from several dozen feet away. She looked up. Charging towards her was a small, green and purple creature. He stumbled, however, when her gaze fell upon him, and looked terrified when a white aura wrapped around him and dragged him before Celestia. "What have we here?" Celestia asked, and he held the creature in place, leaning down. A little dragon! And thou knowest the zebra? The Alcorn looked at Sakura. Thy familiar? Sakura eyed the baby dragon. Was now looking like he had seriously reconsidered his suicidal charge. Celestia, however, only laughed as she leaned back, releasing the dragon from her grip. Misplaced courage seems to have grown in absence in mine absence, she asserted. Stupidity as well. But with my sister in charge for 1,000 years, this is hardly surprising. What is thy name, little dragon? The dragon stared, eyes wide. Spike, he said. Celestia tapped a hoof to her chin and thought. Spike! A simple name. For that I am grateful. Far too many dragons pick the names of unnecessary length, as though the syllables in their names grant some power. Celestia turned once more to Sakura. Thou art in error, my servant. I did not require thy aid. But, what is the saying? 'Tis the idea that matters. Spike looked for a moment like he wanted to speak, but then thought better of it. Celestia turned, leaping once more onto the ridge and looking back to the palace. She wasted a significant amount of time dealing with the zebra and dragon. For all she knew, the treacherous ponies, perhaps prepared by her sister for this very eventuality, already had the corrupted elements and were waiting for her even now to strike. Regardless, the elements were protecting the palace from any great works of magic, at least in this instance. She could not simply call down a solar flare and immolate the palace. No, she would need, instead, to test the water somehow. Something that would be enough to reveal whether or not the ponies already had the elements, but would not put her in danger. Not that she was the least bit afraid, just curious. Celestia's eyes once more turned to Sakura, then to Spike. They lingered on him for some time, before she smiled, and her horn began to glow.